All right. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to our Temple Women's Network Advocating for Herself webinar. We're excited to have you all with us this evening. My name is Renee Hartwell D'Amato, and I am the co-programming chair of the Temple Women's Network, and I will be moderating our panel tonight. So we are going to dive right into it because we have a very full conversation ahead of us. So I'm going to start by introducing our panelists who we are grateful have joined us this evening for our panel. I'll start with Brittany Sennett. Brittany Sennett MBA is a financial planner with a holistic national practice that helps professional women up-level their money and grow wealth with confidence. Her personalized approach to planning is built first on understanding her clients' goals and visions for their future, and then designing smart and tax-efficient strategies that support their journeys to building lasting legacies. Born and raised in Metro Detroit area, Brittany now calls South Philly home, where she lives with her game designer husband and ever-curious one-year-old son. Brittany holds a Bachelor of Music from the University of Michigan and an MBA from Temple University. And Brittany is an insurance agent of NM and NLTC investment brokerage services provided as a registered representative of NMIS and investment advisory services provided as an advisor as NMWMC. Next, I'll go to Dr. Lordana Marzullo Shapson. Dr. Shapson is founder of LifeMod Solutions, a holistic health practice in Newtown, Pennsylvania. She's a pharmacist turned holistic with the mission to empower her patients to know they can heal at any age by providing answers, education, and tools to live more naturally in our modern world. Dr. Shapson earned her Doctor of Pharmacy degree at Temple University in 2012 and is a pharmacist licensed in Pennsylvania and New Jersey. In addition, she is a certified primal health coach, a functional nutritional therapy practitioner, and a Reiki Level 2 practitioner, and trained in energy medicine using muscle response testing techniques to analyze neurological reflexes. Whatever you put in your mouth, whether it be food, a prescription medication, a dietary supplement, a nutraceutical, sorry, Lordana, if I got that wrong, but a herb, you name it, Lordana has the unique advantage of understanding how it impacts your health. She is also a board member holding the marketing and communications seat in her local American Business Women's Association, Bucks County chapter, local women's networking group. And we also have Miss Indra Lynn Owens, MED, with us. Indra is a millennial change agent and a native of Atlantic City, New Jersey. She's a veteran educator and certified school counselor. Indra was honored as the 2020 School Counselor of the Year in New Jersey by ASCA and the 2021 recipient of the Dr. Hector Rios Community Change Agent Award from Rowan University Chi Sigma Iota Zeta Pi chapter, the Counseling Academic Professional Honor Society International. She's a curator of the hashtag Trust Your Journey Project LLC, which focuses on deconstructing myths of mental health and mindfulness in urban communities, building resilient families, particularly in marginalized and minoritized populations. And she graduated from Temple University with a degree in communications and later earned a master's in education and school counseling from UWA and is now in her second year of doctoral studies at Rowan University with the hopes of earning her PhD in counselor education and continuing to brand herself as a mental health and family engagement support professional, author, consultant, trainer, and guide, especially in sharing best practices with community stakeholders and budding counselors in education. She's also a member of the Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated, and she understands the mantra service to all mankind has made this exact mantra the fabric of her lifestyle, actively being the change she desires to see in her community and beyond. So it's evident we have a wonderful group of women joining us this evening to share with us their professional experiences, personal experiences, how we can all advocate for ourselves better as women. So we will start by presenting two questions to each panelist. We'll start with Brittany with the question, what challenges do you see in your line of work that are unique to or more commonly confronted by women? And how does intersectionality exacerbate these issues?
Yeah. I think the core to this question is exactly why I stepped into the career that I'm now in. Before I became a planner, I was actually in consulting for about 10 years. And personally, when I was in my 20s, I lost my mom to cancer kind of suddenly, and she didn't have life insurance, just a very basic foundational piece of planning that you would expect someone to have who has children. I think the truth of the matter is that my mom was a hardworking single mom. She had us when she was young. And to be honest, like my sister and I were finally adults growing into our adult lives. And my mom, I think, was finally stepping into her personal life as an adult with her children now grown. And I think she just thought she had more time. And I won't ever know exactly why my mom didn't have that basic foundational, financial planning piece in place. And because of that, I had to split the funeral costs with my uncles and my grandmother to bury my mom. Um, but that was an awakening event for me in my life, and was one that got me started on my own planning. Because let's be honest, like, I really wasn't raised and to talk about money, to think about money. It was considered rude for us to ask questions about money. And I knew I had to take it upon myself to start putting in the building blocks into place and working with a planner to change the trajectory, right? I didn't want to repeat my mom's mistakes. And so, I came into this business with that as my personal foundation. And as I did some personal reflection about, the impact I wanted to have, how I wanted to grow my skill set and stay curious and just personally grow and be on that constant growth trajectory, in the communities I wanted to be a part of, I really started to realize that I had a personal connection and a genuine like curiosity and interest in planning that, for women, I thought was just such a needed resource. Under, I think, about 15% of financial advisors in the United States are women, and 70% of women want to work with a female advisor. So I think, the core of the question here is exactly why I'm here, providing the services and the spaces that I try to create with my clients to educate and empower women to take ownership over their financial future, to grow wealth with confidence, and to create legacies that probably they've never even thought was possible, all because we're, challenging the status quo that a lot of us, I think, grew up with, and are probably challenging in our own businesses that we're probably going to dive into, here today. Intersectionality obviously makes that even more challenging, because for all the challenges that white women have, women of color or people that are part of the LGBTQ community have also been just completely left out of financial planning conversations. We weren't even allowed to own property, to vote, to have credit cards, like all of these things are things that have just become accessible to us literally in our recent lifetime. And so there's an access gap. There's obviously a skills gap that follows the access gap, and a resource gap as well. We frankly just need more advisors that represent all of the different types of people out there that now need the resources, because I think the studies show too that people just want to work with people that have lived experiences that are similar to them. So, hope I answered the question kind of clearly. I think we're
Absolutely.
going to get into more topics that dig in obviously deeper, but I think that the core answer to that question, or the core source of that, is exactly why I'm doing what I'm doing and why I focus my practice on women. So,
Amazing. Thank you, Brittany. And before I
yeah.
head to Indra with the same question, I just wanted to remind our participants tonight, if you do have questions, you can toss them into the Q&A. Our other TWN committee members and board members are monitoring the chat, and we'll get to those questions in the last 10 minutes of our webinar here tonight. So Indra, I will go to you with the same question. And again, that was, what challenges do you see in your line of work that are unique to or more commonly confronted by women, and how does intersectionality exacerbate these issues?
I could have chimed in so many times as Brittany was really sharing her story, because I think from the mindfulness and mental health perspective, when we talk about intersectionality, of course, we're talking about, like, how we have so many multiple social identities, right? Race, gender, social class. And I think that one of the challenges that really confronts women, as our own sisterhood in most cases, is self-awareness. And so even when I, as a school counselor and as a mental health professional in my own community, when I talk to a lot of my students, and a lot of times I met with, again, single parents, single mothers, or even grandmothers now raising children, I see a lack of self-awareness. And I'm knowing that this is it's a challenge, and it's an issue that is exacerbating other issues, because just imagine the percentage of people just in this world and in our communities that lack self-awareness. And I saw a TED Talk not too long ago. And if anybody that's watching, even the panelists in our audience as well, when you can, I want you to check out, she's an organizational psychologist. Her name is Tasha Urich. And she talks about the phenomenon of self-awareness. And I'm telling you, the data will blow your mind, because when we talk about self-awareness, we're talking about just knowing our own selves, how we're showing up to other people, right? We're really understanding and being intuitive about our own feelings and behaviors, and all of that really impacts how we build healthy relationships. And so again, just going back to the question, I would definitely say, I would say self-awareness.
Awesome. Thank you, Indra. That was wonderful. Thank you so much. And we'll go to Loredana for the same question again. If you need me to repeat it, I'm happy to do so. Let me know.
Got it. All good. So, I'm in the health business, and it's interesting to see the common thing that I see amongst all my women. I specifically work with women who are between, 25, 30, all the way up to 50. Some are outside that range as well. But it's that mom syndrome of juggling life. It's that I don't have time. I'm taking care of the kids. I'm going grocery shopping. I'm doing laundry. Some of you guys are taking care of your parents. And so there's this burden of the savior complex where we're constantly giving ourselves to everybody else. And what ends up happening is self-care. And like you said, Indra, self-awareness goes to the wayside. And so eventually people get burnt out and they get tired. And where this kind of intersectionality comes in, I think, is that gender bias. It's we're women. We should be doing this. This is what we have to do. And, as women, as caregivers, one thing we notice is that sometimes we can have interruptions in our careers. And so this actually prevents us from maybe getting promoted and getting those better wage jobs and being in leadership positions. And that leads to those further wage gaps that we see between men and women. And so it's interesting, as women, we just have this savior complex. But what's amazing is in the past couple of years, they've been calling it this great resignation, right? I don't know if anyone's ever heard of it, but it's the fact that women are leaving their jobs, and it's because they're trying to go find something better. And every time you read about the great resignation, it is always spoken about in a negative way. And I'd like to come at it with a positive way, because here's the stuff that's kind of coming out of this issue is that employers are now having daycares on their sites. They're having gyms in their facilities. They're offering flex work schedules so that you can work from home and you can go into the office. So then when you're on your business call at home, you can run the laundry, you can multitask, and you can get your day's challenges done. So I like to call it the great rethink. And I think it's been a positive impact. But the people that end up in my office are the ones that hit rock bottom, because they've spent so much of their energy giving and giving and giving that they've depleted themselves. And so I'd like to give you guys some tips about how to really manage this. Because I say this to all my patients, I use it in all my lingo in my mails, is if you don't make time for your wellness, you'll be forced to make time for your illness. Okay. When it's inconvenient, when you're not ready, when you can't miss work, when you've got so many things going on. So doing little things every day, making time for your wellness is huge. And I always say this to my patients too. Self-care is not selfless, is not selfish. Okay. People always think I don't want to dedicate time to myself. It's not fair. I have to do all these other things. I think self-care is the most selfless thing you can do, because it allows you to show up in your life as the best of you, not what's left of you. And that's so important.
Agree. Dr. Lord, you on time. I absolutely agree. I say it too.
Yep, exactly. So a few things that we can do to really kind of manage our days and keep our energy. I want you to think of your body as a battery. There are things in your day that are going to steal your energy, and there are things in your day that are going to build your energy. So I want you to start paying attention day to day. What's taking from you? Did you go out to breakfast and you got your, praline chestnut, latte from Starbucks, and then an hour later you're crashing because of that sugar crash, and now your energy's drained, and then you're reaching for the next sugary coffee thing to keep you going? That's an energy drainer. Say you have a conversation with maybe a friend and it's an argument, and that relationship is taxing on you. That's an energy drainer. Maybe you need to start setting some boundaries and saying, you know what, during my workday, I'm not talking to you. I do this with my mother. She, God bless her, I love her, she means well, but I get drained when my mother calls me during the day, because everything's always a life lesson with her. And so I know if she calls me during the day, my boundary is I'm just not going to pick up, or I'll pick up really quickly and say, hey, Ma, I'll call you after work. I'm really busy. I can't say to my mother, don't call me during the workday. That's not right. That's controlling somebody else's behavior. All we can really do is control our own behavior and set our own boundaries. So that's my boundary. I'll call her later, or I won't pick up. And so think about the things that are draining your energy and giving you energy, and focus on those things. And so some things that'll give you energy, Very simple, very cost effective. In the morning, the first thing you can do is go out and get sunlight. Even if it's for 5 minutes, go outside, get some fresh air, get some sunlight. That's personally my cup of coffee. Go for a walk because that's going to give you energy. It's going to increase your circulation. And for those busy moms who have high jobs, circulation and walking and exercise is going to increase the brain blood flow to your brain. It's going to help your mood, help with depression and anxiety, and really help you with those daily things. Even if it's just 5 minutes, walk to the corner and back. Start low and slow and do a goal that you can achieve. You know, finding any movement that you like to do. So for some people, that's dancing. For me, it's yoga, because yoga is something that pairs physical movement with my breathing. And it is a form of meditation for me because I have to focus on my breathing and my body at the same time. So I can't think about anything else. For me, a hobby that I like to do is playing piano. Literally playing an instrument. I cannot think of anything else, but that 10-minute break and using the other side of my brain relaxes me. You know, so you have to find what works for you and plan 5 to 10 minutes to start and do it every day, and pay attention to, does this activity give me energy at the end of the day? It shouldn't be something that should tax you. And then my other advice is, ask for help. If you have a partner, hey, I'm really busy this week. Can you cook dinner? Can you go to the grocery store? You know, I really love your help and support. And just coming at it that way is important. And then also asking your family and friends for help. They say it takes a village to raise a family. It's to help to raise kids and everything. Use your village, use your people, find women like this networking group, right? And connect and have your support system so that you can be successful.
Really amazing perspective and advice. Thank you so much. And I have one more question for all of our panelists, and then we'll go into more individualized questions that focus on your areas of expertise. So I'll start with Brittany again. We'll go back to our round robin here with the question, what unique strengths do women possess that give them the ability to be more successful despite these challenges that we discussed?
Yeah, I mean, I just want to comment to Laura Donna. Everything you said was basically what I talked to my therapist about today. So, I mean, thank you for being a part of my therapy session, I guess, and taking such good notes. Because literally everything we talked about was like, how do I make sure I'm having enough time to make good, nutritious meals for myself? Because it's important to me and my family to be eating well and sleeping and all these things that sometimes go out the window. So I'm sorry, the question again, Renee, was what makes women uniquely positioned to actually excel in these?
So what unique strengths do women possess that give them the ability to be more successful, but despite the challenges we discussed in our first question?
Yeah. I mean, from a financial planning perspective, and also all the challenges, Laura Donna, that you mentioned about women as caregivers or out of the workforce more, we're going to talk more about that. And I can dive into that with one of my other questions. I think it's all the reasons why women make great leaders. We're collaborative. We have a longer term view of what's best for the group than what's best for us. We're not necessarily as driven by ego. And again, these are all very gender stereotypical things that I'm saying. I'm not saying everyone fits these things, but I think, you know, when it comes from a financial planning perspective, women tend to have a greater appreciation for recognizing risks and addressing risks in a financial plan instead of only focusing on growing our money and all the things that we could be doing to grow our money, right? Growth is important, but we also have to think about what liabilities do we have and how do we protect ourselves from those liabilities. And I think women just have a more holistic approach to thinking about the world because we're caregivers, because we're just naturally a little bit more wired biologically that way to think of others, which is also like a weakness, but it's also a great strength in this area. And yeah, I think that also makes women really great advisors, financial advisors. So because again, we're thinking about all the pieces and we're kind of able to multitask in that way as well. Again, these might be over stereotypical generalizations of women versus other genders, but I find that all of those pieces make women really great, and they're really great clients. Like most of my clients, they're women. They come to my meetings like they're prepared, they're type A, they want to know their homework that they have to do, you know, and it's like they're coming to my meetings ready too, which makes them all really, really great clients as well. So
Awesome. Thank you,
yeah,
Brittany. And we'll go to Indra with the same question again. That was, what unique strengths do women possess that give them the ability to be more successful despite the challenges that you discussed?
You're
Indra, you're muted. Sorry.
as women, I would have to say that we're survivors, right? But again, from the mindfulness and mental health perspective, I would really like to encourage us as women, again, in our entire sisterhood, to really stop, mistaking or mystifying survival for resilience, right? And so I talk to a lot of my students, and again, in my clients and their families, and even my colleagues and my family members, I say to them, I want them to keep their resilient tanks full, right? Because we can't really be a benefit to anybody else if we're empty. And so just like Dr. Loredana was saying, and just like Brittany was saying too, I think that a lot of times it really, it helps us if we create a healthy balance. But a lot of times we don't really know what the balance is. And so that's what I say to myself. A lot of times, our families don't know what it is that they need. So not that they're really intentionally being negligent on their own self-care or their own self-awareness, but a lot of times folks don't know what they need. And I think that that's why you have experts like us in certain fields to really give them the tools, and then it's up to them to use the tools. And even that looks different, because this whole journey that we're on is self-paced, right? But I would say ultimately, I would like for us as women to really get out of, we've mastered survival, right? And I want us to demystify that and really turn it into resilience, because resilience isn't, us being, like Rosie the Riveter, but resilience is really the theory of, I have some ups, I have some downs, I may bend, but I don't break, right? And I use my tools within that to continue to keep my resilience tank full, versus survival, where survival is, the folks that Dr. Loredana, then she sees, because, you're at a breaking point and it's like, oh man, how did I get here? But that's because, the resilient tank, it got empty. And then we turbo time in the survival mode. And I would just really like for us to get out of that space.
Awesome. Yes, agreed. So Dr. Loredana, we'll go to you with this question.
Yeah. So amen to that, Indra. Resiliency is so important. Having energy in your bank so that you can handle life stresses when they come at you unexpectedly is so important. So I think a unique strength that women have is humility, right? We can connect differently than I think men can with other people. And that allows for just deeper connection, authenticity, and different levels of communication. It helps us be better team players in our day-to-day life and in our jobs and in our careers. I think that we're more likely to check in on each other. Hey, how you doing? Supporting each other, really being engaged in different managerial positions, being mentors. So I think that because of that, we can really reach people on a deeper level and create change. And it also allows us as women to, talking about this self-awareness, eventually we will uncover that we need to take care of ourselves. We reach a point. And so one thing I always think about is, as you're taking care of your kids, the things that you say to your kids, that's how I want you to talk to yourself. A lot of people have this negative self-talk. They don't even realize it's happening. And we need to be more compassionate and use our humility to ourselves and be authentic and kind to ourselves when we're having a hard day and things aren't going right and everything is going wrong, that we need to say, like, okay, it's just another day, hey, we're going to pick ourselves back up and we're going to keep going. The same things that you would say to your child or a kid. So connection, authentic communication are our skill sets.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So as I mentioned, we are now going to go into some individualized questions for each of our panelists, starting with Brittany. So Brittany, our first question for you is that Equal Pay Day was on March 15th this year, and that day marked for how much longer into the next year that a white woman must work to make the same amount as her male counterpoint. What cascading effect does this have on women's financial picture?
Yeah. So Loredana and Indra, both of you mentioned comments already that I think obviously are impacting women's ability to have just basic access to wealth, which is just through our ability to go to work and earn an income, right? And the fact that we're still under earning our male counterparts, it's not only creating an income gap, but then that's exacerbated into a wealth gap, because if we're making less for our time, we have less to invest. We still have the same bills to pay, and actually women's cost of basic necessities is generally more expensive than men's, right? If you think about our clothes and our hair and all the things we have to pay for to be our thriving selves, it costs more usually, and we're not getting paid as much. The other things that again that Loredana mentioned, the fact that we are child bearing people, right? That we can have children, and that takes us out of the workplace. Means that we're just not working as long as men. We're more prone to disability because of our ability to have children, which could leave us and take us out of the workforce. And then the fact that we're caregivers, right? We could be tapped on the shoulder to take care of our aging parents, but then we're also tapped usually on the shoulder to take care of the kids when they're the ones sick. Again, taking us out of the workforce more, losing out on more earning potential or even promotional potential because we're just not as present in the workforce, as present with air quotes, as maybe our male counterparts are because of those social demands. So, and then couple all of that great news with the fact that we live longer. We actually live longer than men. And in typical relationships, generally the woman is the younger partner. Usually it tends to be that the woman's younger than the male counterpart. So if you're marrying an older man who's going to die first and you're earning less and you're going to outlive him, the decisions he is making financially in your relationship they're going to impact you. They're going to impact you. And it blows my mind. I reach out to women every day to introduce myself. I get referrals from clients, and I still don't know what to say to women yet that tell me, hey, my husband does that. It's like the one objection that I haven't figured out a way to overcome that in like a way that doesn't sound like a crazy person. Cause I'm just like, you're going to die first, right? Or they're going to die first. You're going to be left with whatever decisions, good or bad, he's made. Right. So the problem starts with income, but then, the earlier things that I said too, just the lack of education, not because we're not smart, but because we haven't been invited to the table. And Laura Donna, the comment you made too about the Great Resignation, more women left the workforce W-2 and started businesses in the past couple of years than any other, I think, group of women. And maybe even women of color had did that more. We're taking back our power, and we are taking ownership over our time, our energy, our potential to impact the world. And I see it all around me. We are challenging the status quo of this box that society has put us in. And it is so exciting to be a part of that journey for the women that I work with. I believe so much that if women just felt more confident about the wealth that they could acquire, their worth, and what they should be demanding, and they could grow that wealth with more confidence, we could literally change the world. Because hello, the ones that control the capital make the decisions and control the power in this country, right? And so I hope I answered the question clearly. I get so energized and kind of fired up about this because I just feel like it's so within our reach, and also just our generation, just the when you go home for Thanksgiving and the conversations that your parents might be having, or your aunts or uncles, versus I think how women in our generation are feeling now about our potential. It's so amazing what I think we have access to, and the support we can give one another to really change the trajectory of our lives personally, but then the lives of our families to follow. So the gap is real, but our potential is even greater. So
Yeah.
I'll leave you with that.
The gap is real, and that's why you need Brittany to financial plan.
Yes,
there we go.
Set up your future. So amen to everything you said.
Absolutely.
Thank
No, that
you.
was amazing, Brittany. Thank you. And now
You're
we'll go
welcome.
to Dr. Loredana for our first question for her. So,
Mhm.
social media has been overrun recently with women sharing their stories about unnecessarily painful medical experiences like IUD insertion and removal, for example. So, what impact do you think sharing these stories has?
Yeah, I absolutely love when painful, uncomfortable, authentic, real things are posted on social media, because I feel like social media is a facade. And I want you all to think about your own social medias and ask yourself, is it really a true representation of your life? And I would think that most women would probably say no. I know mine isn't. I only post the good times and the happy things. And so it's easy to get caught up looking at other people's profiles and being jealous and being, envious of what other people have. But the reality is that we all have our challenges, we all suffer, and we all have medical issues. And so it is a big problem in the medical community that regular doctors and what's happening in the medical system, unfortunately, is not, it's a flawed system. And I saw it in the pharmacy when I worked in a pharmacy for 12 years. And that's why I left and started doing holistic care, because it wasn't fixing the problem, it was masking it. And so when we hear other people's stories about their medical conditions, it lets us know that we're not alone. You know, there are other people going through the same thing. And when we share these stories that are deep and personal, we can actually foster more empathy. We can foster more trust and understanding with each other, and we can strengthen relationships. And so I think that for any health condition that you have currently, go on Facebook, and I guarantee you there is a support group for your condition, and you're going to find thousands to hundreds of people who are going through what you're going through, and they're sharing their wisdom as they go visit physician to holistic person to chiropractor to acupuncture to supplements to sharing their wisdom. And while they're going to share a lot of stuff with you, you should still continue to do your due diligence and actually look into those things and don't just take their word for it. But these would be things that you go back to your doctor, go back to your care team and say, I heard this was good. What do you think about this? Is this appropriate for me? So this also fosters a community where if you know that someone's going through the same thing, you can ask for help. You can ask for their opinions. So I think it's amazing to have a support group. I love social media for that reason. And I love the authenticity around that whole situation.
Awesome. Super helpful. Thank you. And now we'll go to Indra for our for specialized question for her. So a lot of your public work emphasizes self-exploration and reflection. And why is this important to you? And how can women start to get to know themselves outside of their relational identities, such as mother, sister, daughter, partner, employee?
I know the first thing that I had to do was, a lot of times I think we as women, especially again with the modality of all the different hats that we wear, I think a lot of times we put ourselves in a box where we feel guilty, right? And so just like Dr. Loredana was saying, like, if we're not absorbing everybody else's issues, if we're not invested in how we can support everybody else, we feel guilty for that. And I know the first thing that I did to really actually do a lot of my self-exploration and reflection was I started, and I do this with clients sometimes. The visual is, I have a paper plate in front of us, right? And I say to them, just like, we should be nutritionally balanced, our lives should be balanced as well, emotionally and socially. And so, you do your portion control in regards to what really matters and what doesn't. And then when we really focus on the things that we can control, those are the healthy things, right? And then when we focus on the things that we can't control, then we don't let those work us up, right? I mean, just like a real life, very real time example of, I don't know what's going on with my internet, but I know that this message must be for so many folks right now, because I mean, even, the opposition with my internet going off and now I'm on my phone, but in that, 10 years earlier, that would have had me over here going wild, right? I'd have got back on, my forehead would have been sweaty, my lipstick would have probably been all over the place. I might have been screaming at my daughter, but we just troubleshooted real quick. I shot a text message, said I'm coming back. And I mean, and I think it's that type of balance and that type of, us just kind of knowing who we are. Again, the self-awareness and the self-exploration and the self-reflection to just say, you know what, everything doesn't have to be a mountain. And I think a lot of times, we're looking through things at through the wrong lens. And again, as women, and when we blow things up, that it does something to us socially and emotionally. And I think that a lot of times we need to really, just probably adopt a mantra like, it doesn't matter. And I use that a lot of times with my mom and, some of my close friends and family members. And they were like, Andrew, some things matter. Well, of course, everything matters. But in the moment, right, where I know I don't want to always go from 0 to 100. And that's in us, right? But I don't want to always react that way. And so I think that, again, all of those tools, though, have to be trained. Like, that's a skill. So those things have to be learned, because I think that we're all on a default from certain traumas and certain adverse life experiences. And so it's easier for us to pop off. We can all do that. It actually takes more work to stay controlled. And so I think that, in a lot of the public work that I do, like the emphasis, especially with our young ladies, a lot of students and families in marginalized and minoritized communities, because they're always, life is like a pressure cooker. And so it's always this. And I'm saying, like, we don't necessarily have to combat aggression with aggression. We don't have to combat confusion with confusion, right? We don't have to combat chaos with chaos. And I think that, as soon as we continue to start normalizing these type of conversations, that, it'll really become embedded or enmeshed in, everybody's lifestyles, because I don't really want to believe that, social class or race. I don't really want to believe that those are uh like placeholders, or those are like markers or dictators of like how we control ourselves, right? Socially and emotionally. I don't want to believe that.
Absolutely. Awesome. That was very helpful. Thank you, Indra. And now we're going to do one more question for each panelist before we jump into our Q&A. So we'll go back to Brittany with the question of, research shows that when women invest, their investments typically outperform those held by men. So first, why do you think this is? And why do so many women sit out of the market despite being better at, at it than their male counterparts?
Yeah. So, anecdotally and research based, because I did some research for this question and also just my own experiences with women, I think fear often fills the gap that education would otherwise fill, right? So whenever we or encounter, especially in the finance space, whenever we encounter an area where we just don't have as much education or experience, and this is like biological, this is like our brains keeping us safe, right? It's like, oh, like we don't know that thing, we got to be scared of it, don't go there. And that's just a natural reaction, right, to things that are unfamiliar. And again, speaking back earlier, the context that we're coming from, it's not because you're not smart, it's because we just haven't been doing this as long, right? First, right? And we just haven't been invited to the table. And a lot of us just haven't felt safe in these conversations because we've been financially abused or told that this isn't a safe place to be in, et cetera, from past trauma, right? So I just want to give us some of that context of why we're first coming into this feeling like we are a step behind. It's just because the context just hasn't allowed us to exist with confidence here, right? But there's behaviors that I think are keeping us from getting in, but also then result in us doing well. And a lot of that I think is women want to know that they're ready. So a lot of women want to do the research. They want to take the time to educate themselves. And this is also probably what keeps us from raising our hands for promotions or going after those jobs at work, right? Where we want to like prove ourselves that we're ready before we actually step in. And I think again, the other gender tends to kind of rush in maybe before, maybe they're ready and that's kind of getting them ahead of us. So, but the fact that we're well researched once we're in the market means that we tend to understand that the market's up 80% of the time and that we don't need to go to our bank accounts or to our investment accounts every time there's a headline that's freaking us out, right? Because headlines are for clickbait, because clickbait sells ads, right? Like, hello world. Headlines, we can't be making our long-term decisions based on short-term information. That's a lot of recency bias and kind of and spinning us into fear. So that's what I think. Women tend to have a longer term view. Despite us being labeled emotional, we tend to be the ones that are able to regulate our emotions better, because we are more in touch with them on a more regular basis, I think. And because of those reasons, we tend to not be trading so much in the market. We let the market rebound and therefore see better returns than our male counterparts. There's some really fun pages I can show you guys. I didn't bring them today, but it's like if you miss some key moments in the market because you got scared and you sell when the market goes down, you don't wait for the market to come back up. You can drastically erode your portfolio by missing out on a couple, even just 10. If you just did that 10 times over your lifetime, you end up with way less money than if you just stayed in the market and rode out the waves. So yeah, I think I meet a lot of women with cash because they're afraid to make the moves. But once I educate them on how we're investing with a proper risk tolerance, understanding your goals, using diversification strategies that are proven, and they really understand how the market works and we're putting in the right strategies in place. The confidence is risen, and then they're willing to jump in and they're able to stay in and see the returns. So
super interesting. Thank you, Brittany. That was
you're
very helpful
welcome.
for me personally, just to know that.
Yeah.
As someone who's
And
can be
I
scared
guess
of
I'd just say
investing.
there's never a good time, right? There's never,
Right.
we have a saying, right? It's not timing the market. It's not figuring out the right time. It's literally time in the market that shows you the best returns. The longer you're in the market, the longer you stay in the market, the more your returns will likely be. So
absolutely. Awesome.
Yeah.
All right, we're going to pop back over to Dr. Loredana for the question of how can women tell when they are working with a practitioner who is not meeting their needs or treating them fairly and or taking them seriously?
Yeah, great question. I love this one. And so, whenever you're meeting with anybody for your care, I want you to ask yourself a question. When you leave that appointment, do you feel heard? Did they listen to you? Do they understand where you're coming from? Or do you feel like a number? Do you feel like they were just trying to rush you out in the 7 minutes that those doctors have for those appointments? Because often that's what ends up happening. And it's often what I hear in my office is they don't feel heard by their doctor and they just get dismissed. And it's frustrating when you know something's wrong and they're not acknowledging it. So just know that after you have the discussion, you should have a good gut feeling leaving that appointment, that you feel confident in what the discussion and that it happened. And if you don't, you need to get a second opinion and find somebody else who can help you. So as women, how can we be better advocates for ourselves in this world? And so you have to understand that when you're going to a medical doctor, they are only doing two things: is they diagnose, and they only tools that they have to help you are to give you medications or prescriptions or to give you surgery. So it's a medication to mask the issue so that you keep going, or two, they're just going to cut it out because they don't know what else to do with it. So knowing that that's what you're going into gives you more power into understanding what you're getting yourself into, essentially. So they're not taught to essentially find the root cause and reverse your issue. They just want you to feel better now and move on. And so if you're recommended a serious invasive procedure like a surgery and it feels extreme to you, go get a second opinion always. And then you need to ask the doctor a few questions. What if I don't do this procedure? What is my risk? What if I do it? What is my risk? Is there anything I can change in my lifestyle that could help me feel better? And I'd be surprised if they give you any of those because they're not trained on nutrition or lifestyle. And then I love this question. Absolutely use it everywhere you go. If I were your mother or your sister or your daughter, how does your recommendation change? And that is the one that I've seen most patients use. And doctors are like, ooh, you know what? Okay, I probably wouldn't do it. And that's when you get real, when you hit that emotional spot for the doctors too. So use that to your advantage. And then number two, go to your doctor, but then find someone else in your care plan who looks at things more naturally and holistically, like your chiropractor, your acupuncture, somebody like me who's in the holistic medicine world, a functional medicine doctor who can give you an alternative perspective for what else you can control in your home life to help yourself feel better. You're not trapped by your condition. Listen to your symptoms and diseases, because that is a cue. That's your check engine light that your body is trying to tell you that you need to pay attention to it. Something needs to change in your life. And then use those Facebook groups so that you can start thinking outside the box and getting advice from others who are experiencing the same thing that you are.
I was going to say, Dr. Loredana, on that point, using networks like we have, even my close network of my friends, whenever we have good or bad medical experiences, we're sharing them with each other so we can make sure that we're all going into these appointments with more positive outcomes. So thank you for that.
Yeah.
And hello to your
Yeah.
guest.
Yeah.
Welcome.
Hello to the new guest here. She's a girl, so she's joining in on the girl
Oh,
party.
yay. Okay, welcome. Welcome to TWM. And now we'll go to Indra for our question of what spurred you to start Princess Incorporated and Trust Your Journey Project LLC, and what impact does the organization have on young women and their communities?
Great question. So Princess Inc., which was our baby, and when I say our, I have a best friend and business partner. Her name is Autumn Bennett, and a great childhood friend. We started Princess Inc. about 12 years ago now, because we just knew that in this area, and again, Atlantic City is small, it's only 48 blocks, but a lot of times, even in small towns, we have New York City size issues. And we knew that it was in a space where we knew that the young ladies needed safe spaces to talk. They deserve mentorship. We wanted to be innovative in community service. We know that we were actually looking for some opportunities to get involved in the community. And, it was the same, like, do this, do that. And we said, you know what? All this kind of community service is corny. Let's create our own innovative ways to serve our community. And so that's pretty much how Princess Inc. was started. And Princess Inc. was extremely successful. And I only say is because we started restructuring during COVID. And so we're at a lull. We still want to continue to do the scholarship piece because we definitely believe that, there are so many deserving students out here who need the resources and they need the financial support to just continue to follow their dreams and aspirations. But even in the midst of Princess Inc. having a lull during the COVID-19, sometimes, some people, when we kind of still look at the effects of COVID-19, some folks have a lot of some trials and some tribulations and some not so happy stories, but it was a lot of triumph for a lot of folks as well throughout COVID-19. And I would say that was in that biggest piece where myself and my daughter, her name is Journey, and which motivated the whole Trust Your Journey project, because as a mental health professional, and I'm into mindfulness, like Dr. Lordana said, I'm into yoga. And when we had to quarantine and be in the house, the first 2 weeks were kind of cool. Everybody's kind of doing their thing. The intrinsic motivation was rolling. And education, after like 2 weeks of us being in the house together, looked like, my child, she was on her hoverboard with her Chromebook, and I'm trying to be a school counselor at the table in front of my laptop. And, we really started to kind of, be at each other a little bit. And I said, no, Journey. I said, home is our safe space. And so as soon as we started to up the ante on our own strategies and, in coping skills, I said I would be remiss as a school counselor if I didn't share the same strategies. Again, keeping our own resilient tanks full and just sharing a lot of the tools that I say are easy peasy, lemon squeezy. With the students and the families who we serve in Atlantic City. And so Journey and I, we co-wrote a book. And in the book, it just really talks about a lot of the different tools and strategies and techniques that we use to keep our resilient tanks full during that time that was so uncertain for all of us. And now, the Trust Your Journey project is just blossoming. Like, a couple of the local universities have really kind of grabbed hold to the concept. I'm in the process of developing an SEL framework, which is, again, the Trust Your Journey project. The framework is to engage, educate, empower, and equip. And I'm feeling good about it. And I think the conception of these types of programs, again, just really go back to the mantra that I say that I live by. Like, when we desire to be the change that we want to see, is easy, right? This is much easier than going to work every day and doing what we need to do to pay the mortgage. And so I think that, we all have this type of innate commitment to do certain things and to live these purpose-driven lives. And I'm just excited about whatever the future holds, really. But I really, really, really believe, and I mean, I say it almost every single day, I'm knowing that everybody, especially in my hometown, knows that I am that person who will push therapy. I believe that we all deserve therapy. If we're saying that joy is a birthright, we got to activate that, right? We can't just, trauma bond with our cousins. We can't just, say that, certain things are taboo in our communities and not in others. We cannot continue to dismiss a lot of the trauma that we've experienced, a lot of the self-infliction. Like, we can't continue to dismiss and ignore those things and think that, we're going to walk around and be healthy and attract love and attract wealth. And so, we have some work to do. We all have some work to do. And I hope that, when people hear me talk about therapy and talk about counseling and talk about mental health, that they know that, this was urgent for me way before COVID, right? And so what COVID did was it just kind of highlighted how serious the mental health needs are of for all of us. And so I hope that we are at a point where, it's not necessarily becoming trendy, but it's really just becoming a topic that we're taking more seriously.
Absolutely. And just amazing work. And thank you for highlighting it for us. So now we will go in our last 10 minutes of our panel. Hard to believe. Have a few questions in our Q&A. So I'll ask my counterpart, Courtney, to lead us off in our Q&A portion of our webinar tonight.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much, ladies, for sharing all your expertise with us. This has been really insightful. And thank you to all the participants for adding some questions into the Q&A. The first question we got is, how do you effectively assert yourself and your boundaries, especially in a workplace setting? And this wasn't specified for anyone, so if any or all of you want to answer.
Yeah, I'm happy to take this one on first. I give people advice whenever they have a new job. One of the first pieces of advice I tell people is to wait at least 24 hours before responding to email.
Love that.
Because I feel like sometimes we get in these new jobs and we're like, oh my God, let me show them how good I am at answering this question, or let me get back to this. And I'm like, I think everything shifted for me in W-2, and then becoming a business owner, obviously things shifted again. But in my W-2 life, when I was like, everything doesn't deserve my attention right now. I've got my priorities that I need to get done today to feel like an accomplished and impactful person. And I got everyone else's priorities that require some of my attention. So it was like, one, everything doesn't have to be answered. Like, not everything's a fire drill, so don't answer everything right away. So that kind of is creating like an intentional time boundary there by just not being available all the time. And then two, I think you have to carve out time for yourself to take care of your own priorities. So like when I was in W-2 land, I used to block off like 90 minutes at least of each of my day every day to handle my priorities. Like, what do I need to get done? How do I accomplish that? And I would block that time off on my calendar so no one could book meetings during that time. So curious on from the other professionals here, what you recommend to your clients. But that was two things that really helped me set
Well,
boundaries.
well, I would say for anybody in the audience who absolutely works within education or works with children, one of my mottos is I serve kids, not egos. And so I know a lot of times, when we work with children, particularly, our colleagues can be just as needy sometimes, right? And I think that we have to always keep the focus and we serve kids. Like, when those kids walk into the building, in the school building or in the rec hall or however you are interacting with students, they walk in to be empowered and educated. And so I think if we keep the children as the focus, that will really help you not to absorb a lot of the other ego stuff that's happening. And a lot of times that's happening, in those adult relationships. And so, I mean, I would agree with Brittany too. I'm resourceful and I'm not always accessible though to the colleagues because I mean, the kids are my first priority. And I want to support adults as they support students. And so I think that whatever your focus is, let that be your focus. Because a lot of times I think, like you said, sometimes we want to, oh, I can do this, I can do that. But, I'm not in the space to be the octopus anymore, right? I don't want to be the person that's right in these spaces anymore. Because what happens is so much capacity here that then by the time we get home, we're fried.
I want to add to this question, how do you assert yourself with boundaries and, in the workforce is we need more of that as women. We need to take on that aggressiveness, I would say, that men have when they're in their work fields, So if you think that you deserve that raise or you want to raise your hand and take on that project and take a lead on something, it's because you can do it. So you need to believe that you can do it and assert your confidence in that and express it. And if you're trying to ask for, say, a raise and you're worried, the worst that's going to happen is you're going to get a no. It's free to ask. So I always say, whatever your boundaries is, if it's going to make your life better, if it's going to make you happier, if it's going to make you a better employee, if it's going to make you a better mom at home, just ask the question.
Yeah. Yeah. And you don't have to say yes to everything. And I always like to ask for time constraints. Like, when do you need this by? What is the deadline? Because my natural tendency was like, I got to do everything as fast as possible because whoever taught me that, right? Too. So we could probably spend an hour just answering that question alone. So
yeah, staying on the same train of boundaries, workplace balance, being with your coworkers, how would you say that you convince others about how important self-care is and not feeling selfish about it, especially with your coworkers?
So for this one, I think you need to live it, like live it to lead it. And if you're doing your self-care and you're showing up better in your day to day and you have more energy and you don't need that cup of coffee at 2:00 in the afternoon, you're going to exemplify what self-care can do for you. I know for me, if I go out for a weekend and I eat pizza and I have alcohol, and then on Monday morning, I know I have a crazy schedule and I am exhausted and tired, I'm not showing up as my best self. I am dragging through the day, and that's not the way that I want to present myself in the work field. And so that's where you can analyze, are you being as productive as you want to be? And if you're not, then self-care is going to be more important for you. And you need to advocate for that for yourself and with others.
Yeah. I mean, I would actually say, and I don't know how this is going to sound, but again, because this is a space where we are encouraging folks to advocate for herself, I'm not necessarily friends with coworkers. Coworkers and colleagues are just that. I'm being very honest because for my own mental health, when I leave work, then I have friends and my family who I socialize with, but I don't necessarily have coworkers and colleagues who are friends. They're coworkers and colleagues.
In my line of work, a common practice is creating an ideal calendar. It's like a kind of like a ritual thing that we all have our ideal calendar. It includes both personal and business related activities from the minute I wake up to the minute I go to bed. And a conversation with my therapist today was like, are you scheduling self-care time and like to do a dump of everything that's important to me and making sure the top 8 priorities, both personally and professionally, are making its, time on my calendar, right? And then I'm actually creating the time. And I think when you start to look at self-care more holistically and really think about, like Loredana, I think you said it earlier about the battery, like if we're not filling our cup, how can we really show up and be our best selves for all of our other responsibilities? And I think that kind of helps bring more weight to what we need to do to take care of ourselves. And also, like, we don't have to justify what's right for us to anybody else. Like, it doesn't have to make sense. You don't need an excuse. You don't need the perfect response. If it's just not going to work, or it's not what you want to do, or it's not going to fill your cup, you just say no. And if you're not surrounding yourself with people that are going to respect that, then you might have to change your environment or change your people if you can, so
Yeah, amen.
Hey, Brittany, I absolutely agree with you. I'm having conversations even with my 13-year-old now as we're navigating, 8th grade. And I'm saying to her, it's so much power in using your no. Like using your no will get you out of situations before you even get into them. So you're absolutely right. We got to use our no and not be guilty, not feel
and
guilty.
no is a yes to us. Like, you're saying no to say yes to yourself, right? And it's no one else's job just to be looking out for you. As hard as that is to realize, it's our job, so yeah.
Yeah, that's very insightful. Thank you all. In the interest of time, we'll just do one more question. So, how do you stick to and be assertive for yourself during any type of business deal when your back's against the wall and the other people have leverage over you?
Can you read?
That's a challenging one when your
Can you
back's
repeat it?
against the
Hold on, I
wall.
just need to read it. How do you assert yourself in your boundaries? Wait, can you repeat that one? Sorry.
Yeah, of course. How do you stick and be assertive for yourself during a business deal
I
when your
see it.
back is against the wall and the other people have leverage over you?
Yeah, there has to be some kind of negotiating that happens as opposed to trying to win the battle. It's meeting in the middle somewhere and advocating for why you think that your belief is better or different or would be more productive in the long run. It's the negotiation, and it's how can we meet in the middle?
Yeah, go ahead, Indra.
Oh, no, go ahead, Brittany.
I was gonna say, for me growing up, like just the basic concept of communicating was always like a win or lose situation. That's just like how I was raised. So like any act of communicating was a win or lose, and there was never like a common ground. And that was something I'm still working to overcome in different situations personally. And so I think for this question, like Loredana said, like it might be just fair to reassess, to ask to kind of like reassess the situation if that's really the real reality, because our perception is also only part of the reality. So I don't know if their person is really a leverage person or not. It might just be our perception.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how to
And
challenge that tactfully, but yeah.
I was just going to add the for the mindfulness piece because, a lot of times too, even when we feel like, we're in a situation where we have to negotiate or there is certain leverage or advantage or disadvantage, I always look at it like this. Your cup is always going to be half full versus half empty, right? And so what's for us is for us. I believe that. And so things that, I've gone to interviews and been in certain spaces, and if it went a way that I wasn't anticipating it to go, then it was supposed to go that way. Right. Because I think sometimes we then leave those spaces and we feel defeated or we feel beat up or we second guess however we moved in those spaces. And again, that can give us, we can go into now bouts of depression or we can be anxious or feeling, like we have some anxiety because of that. Listen, as women, we are a strong sisterhood. And so whatever is for us is for us. Like even with us being in sharing space tonight, I don't even know how Temple reached out to us or to me, And so this was for us. This was for our space.
Well, thank you, everybody. I know we're a little bit over time, but we cannot go further without saying thank you so much to our panelists, Indra, Dr. Loredana, and Brittany. we just appreciate your time and insights, expertise, all of it tonight. So thank you so much. And just to close out, my colleague Katie is going to put a slide up that has all of our panelists' contact information, how you can reach out to them. If we didn't get to your question, we'll share that. And maybe you can reach out to them and just connect, learn more about their businesses, their expertise. Make sure you keep in touch with all of our wonderful panelists here tonight. And then after our webinar closes out, there will be a survey sent to all of our participants here tonight. Please do take a minute or two to complete that. We appreciate your feedback as we continue to develop TWN events for you all. And then speaking of events, our next event will be in the new year. It will be our Afterglow event on January 27th at Hotel Westin Main in Conshohocken. We're very excited to bring that event back. We had a great time doing it last year. We filled with our yoga instructor from last year will be leading us in a class, and we'll have great activities and great fun to begin our new year. So we hope to see you there. We'll keep everybody updated about registration for that. And thank you once again to our panelists and all of you for joining us. We appreciate you taking the time, and join us again for another TWN event in the future. Thanks so much.